So, hello everybody. I was going to do a character creation video for AD&D Dark Sun, but then life happened. And in this case, life happened in the form of a new role-playing game that I came across. It's not really new, it's still younger than me. It was born in 1978. And it's Runequest, which was created by Chaosium. Those are the same guys that created Call of Cthulhu. And I have to say that I had never actually heard of Runequest in terms of, maybe the name had been mentioned, but then there's Rune Master and there is all kinds of things with rune in them. And I have to put my hand on my heart. I cannot actually say that I'd ever heard of this role-playing game, maybe anything beyond the name. And basically, I came across this because I watched, I'm always looking for good videos on YouTube about role-playing games, not necessarily people playing them, but people talking about them. And I came across this channel by this chap somewhere in northern England, and he was doing a review of Runequest, which he had been playing for a good while, and in 2018 Chaosium re-released an edition of it and revamped it apparently. I cannot really say how different it is to previous versions. However, what you're looking at is the Runequest, well, I suppose the basic book that you require if you want to play. So, and there they also have a conversion guide at the end of the book. So chances are that there are some differences, but I wouldn't be able to attest to how different the versions are. Now, what is Runequest? Well, from a storytelling perspective, Runequest is a very heroic game. It is set, and this is something that I have not experienced before, not in a medieval world, but in a Bronze Age world. So, and interestingly enough, in this world, bronze isn't an alloy, but you can actually mine it from the ground directly. So unlike, of course, on Earth, where you have to create it from different components, there it actually is in the ground, and you can apparently mine it quite easily. Now, when we think of Bronze Age, and when you look at this picture, I will say one thing. I'm not the most visual person, but I do like my visuals to be in line. I want them to be stringent. I want to be cohesive. Now, Runequest's art may be good or bad. I leave it up to everyone else to judge for themselves. But if it's one thing that it isn't, it's completely eclectic. There is no one line, which I really don't like, because it means it's almost like they couldn't afford to pay just one artist, so they just basically went for the cheapest ones and then just said, okay, well, let's do 5 of these and then I'll give the next to somebody else. Maybe that makes it cheaper, I have no idea. But the art in this book is terrible because it doesn't have a golden thread. They didn't know what they were going for. When you look at this is very comic-y. I don't like it at all. This is the cover. Just looking at the cover would turn me off. But then there are bits and pieces in this book where I'm like, that's actually really lovely. That speaks to me. It's evocative. This one here is just chaotic. And also the color scheme is terrible. But then again, this is Chaosium, and Chaosium are not known for producing good books. Their content may be okay or good, but the quality of the production is usually very shoddy. So when you compare, for example, the Call of Cthulhu English version up until 7th edition, where they really made an effort, and you compare it to the German version brought out by Pegasus or even by Édition Sans Retour, the French license holder up until, I think, last year. They lost the license, or maybe 2 years ago. Their production quality was much higher. Their artwork was a lot better. I mean, there was like a huge gap between them. So that's that. Now, it's set in the Bronze Age, or in a Bronze Age society. Now, when we think of Bronze Age in our world, we would be looking at Mycenae, Knossos. So we're looking at the world around 1200 BC in Europe. And of course, you can also see this here. There are some, I would say, even armor and stuff that do remind me of Mycenae, of Greece at the time, of what is today Greece, what was then the Greek-speaking city-states. It is a world where everyone is magical. So it's, and all magic comes from the gods. So, okay, you could argue if it's magic and it comes from the gods, then it's not magic, but it's some kind of carnal power. You can call it what you will, but the gods are real. The gods are part and parcel of daily life. Everyone has a god that they pray to, that they are beholden to. Everyone belongs to a cult. And I don't want, I mean, they use the word cult, and in modern English, cult has a very kind of like difficult connotation, because you can even have very charismatic leaders in the far right corner, that, or even in the far left, that could be considered almost cult-like figures, like Mao, for example. It was almost like this cult thing that was going there in China at the time. So for them, cult is not a negative connotation. Cult in this case is really like the ancient Latin word cultus, which simply means worshipping. So you have a cult of a god and you worship that god. And there is nothing sinister about it. There's nothing kind of like indoctrination-like about it. It is people worshipping a deity. And of course, depending on your own persuasion, if you have a problem with deities in general, when you play games, then you should steer away from Runequest, because you cannot play Runequest without this religious text. It's not even subtext, it's text. There are very many gods, so it's a polytheistic world. So anyone who is interested in playing this will find one or two deities that they can really relate to. And these deities, to really be quite short, govern runes that are affiliated with them. So different gods have different runes affiliated with them, but you know, they can also share runes. It's not like it's an either or thing. And these runes give people power, and they can use magic. Every single NPC and I believe every NPC, but definitely every PC is somebody who has runes and who can use them to cast spells. So that's very different from, for example, D&D or DSA, Dark Eye, where you, or also Midgard, where you have classes that have magical power, wherever it comes from, if it's psionics, if it's from the gods, if it's from the earth, if it's from somewhere else. And then those classes that don't. Here, everyone has magical powers. The system itself is the D100 system that you will know from Call of Cthulhu. However, they made the huge mistake not to go all the way as they did in 7th edition, where they also used the D100 system for the attributes, so like strength, constitution, etc. They decided to stick with the 20 system there. So this means we are still faced with the terrible thing that is called the resistance table. So when I'm playing this, what I will do is I will actually say everybody take their stats, the attributes, multiply them by 5. And then whenever there's a contested roll, instead of using the resistance table, which does nothing to enhance the game except complicate it, I would say everybody rolls against their 100 stat that has been modified, that has been basically created by transmutation, and then you just roll against it. Also, what they didn't do, and this is something that I don't understand, because this would have been at the same time pretty much that 7th edition came out for Call of Cthulhu, that they didn't go for half and 1/5. So success, hard success, critical success, because that would have made a huge difference. And I really use this as well in other systems where the system doesn't exist. If somebody says, I rolled a 15 on my roll of 20, so I succeeded, because my stat is 16, then it's just a success. But if somebody has a stat of 16 but rolls 5, their success is so much stronger. So I actually use this in also other play areas, in other systems, because it works really well. So I don't really know why they didn't do it. It's a missed opportunity, in my opinion, to streamline it. Now, there are systems that are story agnostic or world agnostic, like the Cypher system. You can play anything with it, and they tell you that you can. And I have tried, and I've actually converted at least one character from Midgard to Cypher, and it works. In Runequest, you have abilities, some of which you might know from Call of Cthulhu. They have different names sometimes, but you have like your spot hidden and everything. You know, you have your social skills, you have your combat skills, which are of course a lot more important here, because obviously in Call of Cthulhu you can't really, you know, do much combat, because once you see the big bad, you just go crazy, and that was it. But here combat is of course something that does happen, and a lot of the gods that have something to do with war will require you, you know, if you want to rise through the ranks in the cult, to have high combat abilities in order to make it to the upper echelons, if you so choose. And the main thing that I would say is, and this is something that I really like, if you like the D100 system, like I do, I think it's a great system. You could even take these abilities and transfer them into any fantasy game. So if you say, yes, I have this fantasy world, or for example, for me, 5th edition is not detailed enough. I would like to have more abilities, more things. You could take those and just put them in there. It's not a problem at all. You could easily do this, and during character creation, just ask people to create those abilities. And then you have a beautifully crafted ability system, because the ability system in Runequest is brilliant. I always think that in order to fully understand how a system works, playing a game to me isn't enough. If somebody runs a game for me, I don't really, and just gives me a pre-gen, I always find I have questions afterwards. I always find that if I want to understand a system, and if I also want to see if I would like to run that system, not so much play it, but run it, I always want to do a character creation session. I want to understand how characters are made. And there are two types of systems, in my opinion. There are those that are agnostic, where you just basically build a character, and you have plenty of options that you could use for all kinds of flavors, like sci-fi, fantasy, real world, spy, blah, blah, blah. And then you have the ones that are really closely connected to the world in which they are set. And Runequest is the latter. Because during character creation, you get all those runes, which of course come from the god, you make a decision, but also the world of Glorantha, which is where this game is set. And let's see, maybe I can actually show you the look at this art. I'm not sure, there is kind of like a map that shows what the world is supposed to look like. There is, it's kind of like a lozenge that floats. This is what it looks like. So here you've got Glorantha, this is the world. Down here you've got the underworld. Here you've got the world that is inhabited. And Genertela is the northernmost continent, so that's over here. And the information about the different peoples that you can play is based on Genertela in this book. So you have the middle world, which is the earth, which is where we live. And again, you have got this middle world thing, which is of course the same name that you find in the Edda, for example. So it's Midgard. That's where humans live. Middle Earth. And then you have something that's the heaven, and then you have the underworld. And they're all sitting on this ocean. And it's kind of like here you see the lozenge kind of shape. This continent has a story, a history, and it basically is all centered around the Dragon Pass, which is probably, as it says here, the most important place in Glorantha. It is an extremely strategic location sitting at the crossroads of Genertela. And there are many distinctive groups that live there, and basically then you get a very short, and I really like it, a very short breakdown of what has happened. You know, there were the dragon kind, and again it's interesting because this is another role-playing game where there is a time when the dragons or dragon kind, they're called dragon Yutzi, and they look lovely, I really like them, basically ruled the world, and they're still around, but of course there were terrible wars, and some got killed and then they came back, and there was the dragon killing, which was actually, the dragon killing war was not where dragons were killed, but where the dragons did the killing. And so this is really the history of the place, and the history of the place plays an important role when you create your character. And why is that? Because you're talking about a Bronze Age society where you have your own family that you are beholden to, that you're a part of, but then you have the clan, and then you have even like the wider society, the tribe or whatever that you want, that you belong to. And the bonds to those people, your family, your clan, and so on, are what drive you and what motivate you, but also what keep you in check. They're the society that keeps you in check. Although you can play somebody who's at the fringes of society or maybe even outside, and that's when you become a hero, because heroes are not necessarily tied down by the laws. They are beyond the law in a way, but they always fight for good. So, you know, but that's something I think that comes in when you enter the heroic phase of your adventurer's life. And during character creation, and this is what I've never seen like done before, but it does remind me of Kingdom Death Monster to some degree. You get to roll on tables for your grandparent and for your parent, and yourself, to see what your grandparent has lived through, what your parent has lived through, and what you have lived through so far, because you start the game in a particular year, and that is fixed at the age of 21. And what happened to your grandparent, what happened to your parent influences you with regard to your reputation, but also with regard to an heirloom that you might have, but also with regard to where you fit in society. And when I first read this, I was like, okay, well, you know, because usually, I mean, I've got players who will provide me with, or I'm one of those players who says, well, there are 5 sentences of backstory, because I want to develop the backstory as we play, because then some things might happen in the game that kind of resonate with me as a player at the moment. And then I'm kind of like, yeah, that would resonate with my character as well. And the reason why it resonates is because when she was younger, this and this happened to her, or this reminds her of blah, blah, blah. Not because I want to change my character and make her more interesting or more powerful, but because I consider the playing part, the part that is important to me, not so much this is where she comes from and blah, 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 blah. And then we have players that will send you 20 pages and keep writing and keep making up more about their character. Both are valid. But here, some players might say, oh, they're taking away a lot of my creative juices, because they're telling me this is what happened to your grandparents, this is what happened to your parents. And since it's a limited number of choices, each, you know, if you're very unlucky, although this is probably highly improbable, players' histories could be very similar. But then again, considering that their world was a lot smaller, because we're talking about Bronze Age people, it is highly likely that if you grow up in the same place, in the same clan, with the same values, your lives will have been very similar. And I think when you look at our own world, at least here in Germany, everybody goes to kindergarten, or should. Everybody then goes to school, primary school for 4 years. And then depending on, but at least in my age, when I was young, you had a choice between 2 schools and that's where you went. So everyone was kind of like really, people's lives when they were young were very similar. They became more dissimilar when you got to the question of, do I stop school now and do I start working at age 15, or do I keep going and then maybe, go to university? That's when people's worlds started to diverge, and quite dramatically. So if you're from like a rural area like I was. But in the very beginning, your lives are quite similar. Especially the same age group in a small village would go to the same school at the same time. You would have known each other from kindergarten. So basically, yes, I think this makes sense. And considering that, as I said, these are Bronze Age people who will not be able to travel much, it does make sense for them to have very similar backgrounds. And the backgrounds of those grandparents and parents can be quite heroic as well, because there were plenty of battles that they could have taken part in, and there's also the possibility of them dying. Now, before we go on, I would like to say a couple of things, because obviously this is 2022 and there's always a question of diversion and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion. What am I saying? And this book is, in my opinion, one of the ones where I was surprised that they are doing it in this matter, in this way, and they're doing it really well. So this is probably the only book that I've ever read with regard to role-playing where they are explaining the character creation process using a person and basically then taking them through their, if you like, ups and downs in life. And they explain all of these things in the different chapters. So you have the Battle of the Queens, which is Fire Season 1626, map 0, during the game system chapter. And you can see this this map down here. This is Vasana's saga, and this is Vasana's journey. And you can see here 587 down here. So that would be 5 spirit magic, spirits, and shamans. So this is how they have basically explained what's happening when you read the book, to tie it back to an actual character, which I believe is also available as a pre-gen for the introductory solo adventure, which we are going to play because that can be played online, thanks Chaosium. And this character is female. And I thought this was awesome, because you immediately have representation of somebody who is not usually the main target of role-playing products. They also have gender. They have 4 genders, which they define as male, female, both, neither. And they also have an interesting concept where they say you have males in male roles in society, females in female roles, males in female roles, females in male roles, or in neither role, or in both roles. So this idea is, yes, there are certain, if you want to play it like this, that there are certain roles that are more taken by one gender or one sex, depending on how you want to do it, or another, you can do this. But in general, it is totally fine for everyone to do whatever they like with regard, and I believe also with regard to their abilities. And this is something that they specifically say, and I really like it. They also, and again, this depends on how you feel about this, there is no restriction on who marries whom. So they have complete marriage equality. They have put a taboo on this in the book. And that is something that I found very interesting, because it does make sense from my point of view. There is one taboo, and that is you cannot have any relationship of an intimate nature with somebody who has not yet come of age. So that's, they say, is a big taboo. And I think this is also, they've put their foot down, they've put a limit here, and I actually concur. I think this is very good, that they are spelling it out and they're saying, yes, it's a completely open society, but there is one rule, and I think this is a rule that I actually think is great that they're spelling it out. So when it comes to this, I think there's something in there for everybody, and I like the fact that they are doing it, and that they did it this way, and thanks Chaosium, because I think this is really great. And now we come to something that I really love about this book, and that's the maps. The maps are beautifully drawn. I'm somebody who loves maps, and these are just gorgeous. I really like them. So I believe what I would like to do now is I would like to actually start creating a character. And for this, I've got and this is free, you can get this from Chaosium, but it's also available on DriveThruRPG, but it is the Chaosium character sheet, and it's fully fillable. And we can take a look at this, because there are some things that you can see right off the bat if you know about role-playing games. When you look at armor, you see that we have hit locations. We've got the head, the left arm, the right arm, chest, shield, leg, abdomen, and so 2 legs. And in this case, what also happens is if you get, and each location has its own hit points allocated. Hit points are based off of other stats, and where they and how many you have where depends on your overall hit point total. But what can happen is that you can actually lose an arm or a leg if your hit points, if you keep getting hit in one particular location. Unfortunately, if your hit points get too low or drop too low below 0 there, you may actually lose an arm. So in this way, it's a lot like a Midgard, where you can also, when you have a critical hit, you always have to roll on the hit die, on the hit table, on the critical hit table, and then things can happen. So for example, one of my players lost an eye through that. And of course, this has all kinds of ramifications now. They have to wear, they have a really long scar, and they have to wear an eye patch if they want to hide the milky eye that they now have. They now have a couple of problems with perception and so on and so forth. But that makes interesting role-playing. It makes for interesting role-playing, but it also has interesting consequences. What happens if you're right-handed? Because handedness is a thing in this game, like it is in Midgard. And if you lose your right arm and you're right-handed, what do? You've got a problem. Then you've got your characteristics, so strength, constitution, size, dexterity, intelligence, power. So this is also the power value that you would be familiar with from Call of Cthulhu, because it also basically governs your magic points. But of course, unlike Call of Cthulhu, where when you use magic you go crazy, here you don't. And then you've got charisma, damage bonus, and so on and so forth. Passions. So this is also something that's interesting, because the passions are basically given to you during character creation. You have some influence over them, but they basically they provide you with certain limits as to what you can do or how you react in a certain situation. So they are a little bit, and I'm really saying a little bit, like the alignment in 5th edition, with the exception that you have an actual stat and you can roll against it, and you may have to roll against it. And I find that really interesting. I still haven't quite figured out the implications of it all, but I find that really interesting, because it's a little bit like also sanity, which influences how you can deal with certain things. in terms of, oh, now you see something, you roll sanity, you under-roll it, it's great, you're fine, you can deal with it. But here I think it's more like somebody has really, so a passion could be a hatred for dragons, or a love for your god, or something like that. But as soon as this is challenged, you have to kind of see, how do you react? And I like that very much. One could say, of course, oh, that's taking away from the role player's agency. So basically, oh, if I as the game master want to see what's happening, then I just make them roll, and if they fail, then weird things happen. But where's the role playing aspect in this? Yeah, that's true, but I think it depends on how you do it at the table, or even for yourself to see, does this still work for my character if I'm in a conflict situation? The hatred of dragons, there's a dragon. How much does this but this dragon is actually trying to talk to us. It's trying to heal our comrade. It's trying to heal me. Do I accept this? I hate dragons. Or do I really think, and if you're in doubt, then you can say, okay, well, yeah, I try. Or your game master might say, no, actually, your hatred of dragons is so strong. The fact that this is a dragon means you can't let it heal you. You're dying. These are things that you can basically use as well, I would say, as hand of fate moments. So I'm quite intrigued by this. Then you have the cults. Basically which cult you belong to, what your rank is. You can have more than one cult. Apparently then you have rune points and spirit magic, so weapons, rune magic, so there are different types of magics, and the hit points and the magic points, and basically you track them. And down here we have the ability, so agility, so different attributes, different characteristics influence different types of abilities. So agility, of course, communication, so agility would probably be dexterity, communication is more like charisma based. So these are all things that you have here, and when you look at this, I mean, this is something you could use for any, and I really mean any, fantasy role-playing game. Then Elder Race lore, well, you can retheme this. You can say knowledge of the gods or whatever. Homeland lore. Okay, so what do I know about my own land? What do I know about library use? Manage household, mineral lore. These are all things that ship handling, survival, treat disease, treat poison. And if you want to have a 100 system, you can use this. And I really, really like it. I think it's awesome. When we go down here, we have probably, sorry, this is taking a long while. And this is the family part that we will come to later, where it actually says, who are they? Are they still alive? Are they dead? Because that's also important. Because worst case scenario, you are an orphan and your whole tribe has died. You are screwed. This is something that is really important as well. So family events, marriage type, status, spouse, events, children. Do you have children? Do you have holdings? And there is also quite a lot that deals with what happens between adventures, as it were. So there is quite a lot that happens there. Because the idea is that since you are a member of a society that is quite tight-knit, your decisions and your actions reflect back on the tribe, but also have consequences for them. So this is a little bit like Mutant Zero, where you also have whatever it's called. I keep forgetting the whole name of it. Where apparently, so I've been told, you also have kind of like a stronghold that you can work on, that you can build, that you can fortify, because of course it's a dystopian world. I don't think that you have to do it here, but you could in theory have like this village, and things that you do reflect back on the village. And if you succeed or fail in an endeavor, let's say to find food in winter, the people in your village will suffer and they might die. And I think this is a lot more about being in your, and I like the term homeland. In this game system, people are rooted in their homeland, and this is what this is about. So it's and they don't start out as heroes. Heroes and hero questing are a particular part of the game system. And I'm just going to read from page 9 in the book, Epic Scale. Adventurers are part of a larger world. The game is epic in its scope and scale. Adventurers can participate directly in the events of the Hero Wars. This is the era that we're in as the book starts. An adventurer may perform a type of ritualized adventure called a hero quest to discover new magical secrets and better learn how to become a hero. A prominent figure in the great scheme of things. That's the definition of hero. Heroes and hero questing. A hero quest is a magical act where mortals directly interact with Gloranthan mythology. The participants endeavor to reenact mythological events to bring some of that magic into the mundane world. Hero quests are fraught with peril as they are unpredictable and often deadly. Failure can bring not only ruin to the hero questers, but to their communities and cults. A hero quester simultaneously interacts with Gloranthan mythology and with the mundane world. A hero is one that has walked in this dangerous path, on this dangerous path and has been changed by it. The hero is endowed with exceptional powers and uses those gifts to battle against enemies that endanger the peace and well-being of the community. And yet, the hero is not bound by the rules and restrictions of the civilization they defend and is rarely at home in the civilized world. So that is really a decision for an adventurer. Because these guys are not heroes when they start out. They're adventurers. That's what they're called in the book. It's a conscious decision to go on to become a hero. But by this act, you set yourself outside of society. Some of the rules do not apply to you any longer. Laws may not apply to you any longer, but also restrictions of the mundane world, because you have interacted with the myths of your people. It's like, oh, there is Heracles. Let's help him with his 12 chores. That's the kind of thing that you're looking at here. But by interacting with and touching this transcendental place, you are forever changed. And I think this is also something that is quite important to note. You are now no longer, you are a person without a home. You are not one of the mythological creatures, but you're also not one of the normal humans anymore. So you have lost your home. And for somebody for whom tribe and clan is so important, this must be a huge, huge step that must be well thought out before you undertake it. And I think that is even kind of like really about role-playing. Do you really want to take that step? And what does it mean? What does it mean if you then basically don't belong anymore? You don't belong. You walk in many worlds, but you are a citizen of neither. That's tough. And so this is, I think, for really advanced campaigns, you don't start out doing this. And it's quite clear that in the beginning, yes, you are powerful, but so is everybody else, because everybody else has access to magic. And if magic means power, then everybody is on an equal footing with you. So let's just take a last look. Adventurer background, again, homeland. There are different homelands described in the book. And then you have the base passions: love family, love clan, love tribe, hate other. And this is the family history. And as you can see here, the grandparents' history, and you get one favorite grandparent and one favorite parent, and they make it quite clear it doesn't have to be a blood relation. You can also have been found, adopted, whatnot, fostered, blah, blah, blah. So they again cast the net of what is a family very wide. And here you see those years and they are fixed. So basically 1561, your favorite grandparent was born by this year. And This is interesting. If your favorite grandparent survives this long, they retire from adventuring. Now your favorite parent begins adventuring. Determine your mother's and father's siblings if desired. See the family section. And this basically walks you through. And then in the book, you find the things that you need to roll on. And I would suggest that we do a character creation. And I will see you then.